That's the name we run.
Hey guys, Kurt here, Armor of God Shooting Team. I just wanted to come and make a video of a DIY project that a lot of shooters should be utilizing. We all know that the absolute worst part of competition shooting is
taping targets.
Taping target.
You gotta be taping target. You gotta be taping and resetting targets.
taping targets. There is a very well-known company out there that has given us in the 2A community the idea of self-healing targets that you get to just spray paint over your hits. Well, I have shot those targets. They are fantastic targets. I was sitting around in my garage one day. I had a couple of horse stall mats that were left over from my home gym, and I decided, I wonder if I made those look like targets, if I could shoot through them. And lo and behold, that is the case. So today I'm gonna build some targets for my buddy Danny over at Make Ready Shooting. Go check out his channel, it's awesome. He has requested that I make him some rubber self-healing targets. So I, of course, said, heck yeah, dude. So I'm gonna go through the process today. We're going to go through the whole process. I'm of course going to speed up the most boring parts of all of it, just so that you don't have to watch me sweat. It's about 110 degrees in Arizona today, and you know, that's what I get for living here. Anyways, I hope you enjoy the video. I'll catch you at the end. All right, kind of want to go over some of the things that we'll need to make these targets. A nice piece of PVC piping here, preferably a little bit longer than the one that I have, maybe 3 feet. You're gonna need a Sharpie. You're going to need a paint pen, some sort of long straight edge. Definitely some spray paint, an IPSC target or a target of your choice so that you can make a stencil for your targets. A pair of gloves is an absolute must. I've got glasses on my face. You're going to want a box cutter and the piece de resistance. This is the most important piece, I believe. A speedball or such linoleum cutter, they call it, and a new set of blades for that linoleum cutter. All right, guys, we're out in the garage. I've got my horse stall mat up on the table. First thing, make sure you wipe down the horse mat. Get all the dust and dirt and debris off of it. Paint's gonna stick a lot better. You're not gonna have stuff underneath the paint. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I took a regular IPSC target and I cut the different sections out of it. We're going to use this as a stencil later. But for right now, I'm going to measure out the targets, kind of get my lines for the size of the targets. I'm going to use a paint marker to kind of outline my targets. Well, I'm not going to outline them right now. I'm just cutting the rubber for the targets right now. Normally, I usually, my target stands are about 28 inches, so mine are a little bit bigger. I'm making these for a friend who has the standard 24-inch target stands. So actually, for him, we're gonna get 3 targets per horse stall mat. So we're gonna get 6 targets today. Yeah, I usually get 2 out of mine. So total of 4 targets for me. Here we go. Just gonna make marks at the top and bottom and at the widest part of the target. Just make sure that I'm actually gonna get that 3rd target. I sure am. All right, perfect. We'll set that aside for now. And then I'm just gonna mark out my lengths. I'm gonna cut these rubber mats down to size first, and then we'll cut what we don't need. So really, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this or not. That bottom left portion over there, that's about as much of the excess as we have for these 3 targets. So not too bad. All right, I've got my mat all sectioned out. We're going to start cutting. I like to use the Speedball linoleum cutter. It has a blade on there that's just a straight blade. I use this because I can push, and I feel like I get a little bit deeper if I can push across, instead of just using a box cutter where I have to make multiple strokes in order to get through the mat. This is going to cut pretty deep the first time, and then I'll go back and I'll finish it with a box cutter just to get all the way through it. Grab yourself some gloves. If for any reason the blade comes up shallow and you slide across the rubber mats, you're gonna find that the skin on your knuckles is gone. Ask me how I know. Also grab some glasses, just be safe. Oh, I forgot to mention, while I'm doing the cuts, I take a piece of PVC pipe, I put it right along the line that I'm cutting. As I go through the rubber mat, it kind of spreads open as I'm making the cut, makes it a lot easier. And the first of these that I just used a regular box cutter. So you can use a regular box cutter. It works just fine. Just know you're going to put a little bit more effort into the pulling instead of the pushing. That's why I like this thing. I start at one end. If I were smart, I would have made my PVC pipe about 3 feet wide instead of the 2 feet wide. So I readjust in the middle. Right, here we go. Kind of takes a little bit to get started. What you do, kind of just slides through almost like scissors on wrapping paper. You guys know that feeling, it's pretty satisfying. All right. I'm just about to the end of my PVC pipe there, so I'll come down and do the other side. And that's the first cut. I did forget to mention, this has a cutting edge on both the top and the bottom. So as I'm sinking into that rubber, it's cutting from the bottom and along the top as well. Back with my box cutter, just finish up this cut. It's pretty deep. It's actually almost all the way through now. We'll finish it up with this. Make sure to try to spread it out as much as you can. Get way down deep into that cut. On through the whole thing here. All right. Blooper reel. And that's that. I'll cut this little section off here, and then we'll have three equal pieces of rubber to make the 3 targets. All right, guys, so it's time to take these out to paint. I use the Zinsser Bullseye 123 primer. I find that the primer, it's in bright white. I find that the primer just gives a little bit more coverage. That way I'm not outside painting in 115-degree heat here in Arizona for more than I need to be. It also, the primer's a little more matte finish, so there's not as much gloss. You don't get glare from the targets, that sort of thing. Also, I feel like, because I've done this with regular spray paint as well, and I just feel like this kind of shows the hits a little bit better. Maybe it pulls the projectile pulls a little more paint through as it's going through the target. And we use these for training, so it's kind of nice to see your hits. I have heard of people painting them tan if they wanted to match like the IPSC targets, kind of give it a more realistic color, if you will. But we just use these for training, so it's kind of nice to be able to see your hits from a distance. All right, let's get outside. All right, we're gonna let these dry, and then we'll bring them back inside the garage. All right, guys, so we're done with the painting process. We're going to just do a little light sand on the top of the paint. As the paint dries, the rubber's a little porous, the air bubbles are gonna come up, so I like to just give them a real light sanding on the top, just to kind of get rid of the rough grittiness of it. Because we're going to be tracing our targets on there, it's easier to have a nice, smooth, flat surface. just nice and light. You don't want to take the paint off that you just painstakingly put on there. Alright, just blew them off with the air compressor a little bit. Get all the dust off of there. These look great. Alright, let's start our process here of tracing the targets. Alright, so I've got all the pieces that I need. Again, I've just taken a regular IPSC target, cut out all the perforations, and those are going to be our lines for the target. Grab yourself a big Sharpie. Get everything lined up. Head box. I'm going to work on the C-zone here. And I only go up to the very top edge here of the C-zone. I'll show you why in a minute. Our A-zone here. So this is what that looks like. The reason that I don't do the rest of the C-zone is because the target has it end up somewhere like right here. And I like to just connect this to this because there's not really any B zone anymore. So we just leave this open for the A zone. If you wanted to, you could come all the way up to the corner where it would be. It'd be somewhere like right here. And you can draw your head box in if you're doing some defensive training. Some defensive training uses that whole head box instead of just the A zone head box. But since we're using these for competition practice, I'll try to make my targets as close to an IPSC target as I can. So I'll just close off these. All right, and now we have the lines. I'm going to finish the rest of these targets, and then we're going to cut in the grooves. And that's actually a very simple process. It took me a while to figure out the easiest way to do it. I'm sure there's a much easier way to do it than what I've come up with. but what I've come up with actually works pretty well, and it doesn't take very long. So, all right. I'll be back when all these are done, and we'll get cutting the grooves. All right, guys, I got these all stenciled out. And now I'm going to use the linoleum cutter again. And it's got this little, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this. It's got this little V groove. You will. And so those, I'll just take this, dig into the rubber, and run it all the way up the lines. And that's gonna cut the groove to make these lines permanent in the rubber. Again, grab your glasses. Definitely grab your gloves. So with cutting the grooves, you do have more of a chance of slipping. And I'm telling you, when you're down here and you're digging into these grooves and it slips off, those knuckles just grind up against that rubber, and whew, the skin just comes right off. It does not care. All right, here we go. I personally, I don't have a preference of starting in the middle or starting on the edge. It doesn't really matter either way. But basically, I'm going to keep that black line right in the middle of this groove. And I use the number 3 blade. If you go on Amazon, you can buy I think it's a package of like 5 different blades. The 6 blade is number 6 blade is that straight blade that I used to cut the rubber initially. And then the other ones have just different widths of the V or the groove. I've tried the smaller one. It works okay, but I find that when you go to repaint the targets after you've shot through them, the paint tends to cover the smaller grooves quicker. The paint will cover the grooves, but that's okay because I'm going to show you how to refresh your targets as well. All right, let's get to it. Put some weight on it because you're gonna be pushing, and this rubber's gonna want to fly off of there. But it's pretty simple. And if you have a brand new blade, it goes really nicely through this. And we're not gouging too deep. You want to see the front of the forks of that groove just barely under the surface of the rubber. And once you get to the very corner of where you are, just kind of give it a pluck up and it will pop that piece out of there. All right, and we're just gonna keep on tracing. Again, put some weight on there. Keep on tracing. Keep your hands and wrists and other body parts out from in front of that fork, because this is basically a razor blade. It is sharp. So just be careful. We're not trying to make these before a match, right? We're just trying to make something that we can use as a training tool. So take your time. The linoleum cutter can get away from you real quick. So just keep everything out of the way. Body parts, keep body parts out of the way. But also try to find that happy balance between it moving along nicely and going too fast. Because if you go too fast and you have any little shift, you're going to go right off of that line, and then your lines aren't going to be straight. All right, just check, make sure that we got all the trace lines. There's your target. It's ready to go. Now I talked to Danny. Danny over at Make Ready Shooting. These targets are for him. I asked him. I said, "Hey, we can make them the shape of the target if you want. So this rubber would be gone. This rubber would be gone. I just feel like if you're hanging it on the 24-inch target stands, that head box would be a little bit floppy." So I said, "Hey, why don't we just cut it the length of the target, but have the width go all the way up. That way you've got place to clamp your targets both at the top and at the bottom, making for a sturdier target, if you will." But anyways, guys, so that's it. I'm gonna pull one of my old targets over here. I'll just show you how to refresh it real quick. Super simple. I do recommend that you have a new set of linoleum cutting blades every time you do a new project. I have gotten through making 2.5 sets on one blade, but it starts to get real hard to push through that rubber once that blade dulls out. So just pick them up. They're on Amazon, I think, for maybe $10, $11, and that will come with the 5 different blades, so you can choose which size groove you want. But you also have that straight blade for the initial cut through the rubber. Anyways, let me pull one of my old targets over here. We'll just go through refreshing that, and I'll get these all done off camera. Clean. All right, guys, I've got one of my old targets here. I'm just gonna freshen up some of the lines. The first thing I would do, I didn't do it here. This is one of my old targets. I've got some other ones in my truck right now, but basically what I would do, I'd probably sand this down a little bit. The paint chips away, gets hard. Sand it down a little bit. I'm gonna give it a fresh coat of paint. I'm gonna sand it lightly again to get those air bubbles out. And then I'm just gonna take the 3 blade that I was using to make the initial grooves, and I'm just gonna go back into the grooves, and I'm gonna kind of just go back and forth, work it back and forth, nice and light. You don't have to do as much pressure as you were doing with making the initial grooves, because all you're doing is scraping that paint out of there, right? You just want that line to be black again, which is fine. If you do get into a spot where there's some really caked up paint right here, you can dig down into that rubber again. It's not gonna hurt anything. You're not gonna go through the back of the rubber just by working through that groove again. Just kind of getting the rubber to come out again, the black of the rubber to come out again. But yeah, you just kind of move it back and forth. Nice and easy. Not a lot of effort in there. And you're gonna have fresh lines on fresh paint. You'll have a fresh target again. All right, guys, that's it. We made 6 self-healing targets out of 2 3x4 rubber horse stall mats. That's a pretty good return on your investment. If you've got the time, you've got a little bit of grease in your elbow still, and you want to do these yourself, it's a pretty simple process. If you don't have that elbow grease, we know the company, they make these targets for you. They're great targets. You're going to get about 4,000 to 6,000 rounds through these targets if you're using round nose ammo. If you use flat nose ammo, it's a little bit more detrimental, but it'll still last a little bit. Hollow points are a no-no. If you're shooting hollow points through these targets, you are going to find that after your session is done, you have Swiss cheese for a target, and it's hard to paint over Swiss cheese. All right. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, let me know if you want to see more content like this. I got a few more ideas for some DIY projects. Anyways, I'm Kurt, Armor of God shooting team, and I just want to let you guys know it's real easy to miss targets. It's harder to miss in life if Jesus is your front sight.